everybody. Decided to do my project on Pearl Harbor, the events that led to this infamous attack, and the dire consequences that followed. In this slideshow, we will cover Japan's ambitions towards an empire. We'll go into events that transpired during the attack and the aftermath and the consequences of the attack on Pearl Harbor. During the beginning of World War II, the strategy for many countries was to avoid and stay out of conflict for as long as possible to protect their civilians and their country as a whole. And this was true for America for many years. Initially, America viewed this primarily as a European conflict, deeply rooted in events that happened far prior to the 40s and World War II. Although America had connection to many of the European countries that side with them on many matters, it wasn't America's intention to fully immerse themselves in the events of the times. Prior to any involvement in this worldwide affair, America and President FDR decided that America would act in accordance with isolationism. Although it was inevitable for America to side with certain countries in particular matters, they still wanted to remain neutral, or at least have the appearance of remaining neutral. Let's see. This didn't prove to be the case all the time, because America decided to give firearms to Great Britain, France, China, and the Soviet Union. This was clearly a telltale sign that they aligned with many of the Allied forces, and this did not bode well with Japan. So during the late 1930s, Japan had an idea that it was their time to be taken more serious as a country and to be a larger power in the world. They had plans of building their own empire at this time, and one of the main things that was holding them back from being a cared about country is their lack of resources, and they realized that they weren't able to get these resources just through their own country. They had to do it through trade because their country didn't produce such things, especially the oil that they needed. So their only hope was to look through trade. When other countries decided not to involve themselves in trades, they realized that they ended up having to do it by force and by invading other countries. And the first one that they decided to do that with was Manchuria, I believe. Yes, Manchuria, which was at the time a province of China. They ended up occupying that land, resulting in a conflict between Japan and China at the time. Meanwhile, American President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, was aware of Japan's goals of becoming an empire and getting more natural resources, especially through their invasion of Manchuria. So his response was to place an embargo on Japan, which stopped all trade between America and Japan, which was consequential at the time because Japan needed natural resources. And they really could only do it through trade. So that was severely damaging to them. Other countries shortly followed America's lead after FDR did this embargo. This was bad news for Japan. They got 94% of their resources from other countries. Japan knew that their only way to attain these resources was by attacking countries south of them, which were the Dutch East Indies and British Malaya. Japan knew that if they did end up following through on these attacks to the countries that are south to them, that America would respond by attacking them. So Japan wanted to blunt America's attack on them, and the only way they could do that was by attacking Pearl Harbor. And Pearl Harbor is the port where America had, it was in Hawaii, it was on the island Oahu, and that is where America kept its ships, um, its naval ships, in case of an attack. That's where they would use them. So Japan knew that if they attacked Pearl Harbor, America's response would not be as severe if they ended up going into the southern countries like Dutch East Indies and whatnot. So Japan's two main reasons for the upcoming attacks on Pearl Harbor was because their angers towards America's embargo and to weaken America's military strategy so that their advancements into other countries would be easier. Now we'll get into the actual events that transpired after many months of planning to attack Pearl Harbor. For the reasons I stated in the last slide, um, Japan decided to go through with these actions on December 7th, 1941. Japan sent out their first wave of aircraft. There was two waves that came through, both by surprise. Meanwhile, clueless to the incoming attack, the USS Ward spotted a Japanese submarine in the distance before any of the aircraft even came through for the attack. And America's response was to fire it down, which they did successfully. And these ended up being the first shots fired in for America in World War II, even though they weren't officially a part of the war yet. This is their first official shots towards another country. At 7:02 a.m., a radar picked up a signal of aircraft coming in, unidentified aircraft that were possibly not a part of America's Air Force. But since the equipment was pretty new, the technology was pretty new, so the lieutenant made the assumption that there was no danger coming in, and they just called it a false alarm. But obviously that wasn't the case, because shortly after, they realized it was Japan's aircrafts, and they were attacked by the first fleet for an hour. By the first wave attack for an hour, the first 30 minutes was actually the most damage. They sank different ships like the USS North Carolina, Tennessee. The one that got the most damage, infamously, was the USS Arizona. And so the aftermath of Japan's attacks on Pearl Harbor were pretty big. After a quick observation of how poorly the military leaders prepared for this, Rear Admiral Husband E. Kimmel and Lieutenant General Walter Short were relieved of their duties. They did not prepare well enough for it. And then 3 days after the attack, America decided to declare war against Japan. Although FDR tried to be an isolationist and stay out of the war, this was enough to bring them into war with Japan. But shortly after that, countries that were aligned with Japan, such as Germany, Italy, declared war against America as well. So now America was fully involved in the war just because of the events of Pearl Harbor. Just like that, they were involved. Although America had joined the war, the perspective of many Americans had changed after the events of Pearl Harbor. The heaviness and the sadness of what actually could happen on American soil was settling into, the minds of American civilians. So they decided to really, stick together through this, and it really made people believe that we should be a part of this war. As the war went on, so as the war went on, America knew they had to cripple the power of the Central Powers in order to have momentum on the side of America and its allies. Now capable of creating an atomic bomb, America knew this could be a quick but devastating move that could end the war in its totality. After many attempts to get Japan to surrender without devastating consequences, America was left with no choice. So, within days after that, America dropped its first atomic bomb, I believe, over Hiroshima. I should have double checked that. But and then the second one over Nagasaki. Over 150,000 people died as a result of that. Many now believe that if Japan didn't awake the sleeping giant um, with their attacks on Pearl Harbor, the outcome of the entire war would have changed. So, um, this attack on Pearl Harbor awoken America, brought us into the war, obviously had dire consequences on Japan's country in general, but in the whole world, who knows what would have happened if America wasn't involved in this conflict, furthering, you know, Hitler's regime, all the other Central Powers regimes. So this really opened the window for, for us to do it right. And there we go. That's my slideshow. Thank you.